Brilliant. Hello, everyone. Right, so today we have got Jennifer with us. Would you just introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about what you do?
Yes. So I'm Jennifer Elia. I'm actually based in South Dakota in the United States, um, which is the upper Midwest. I live on a small family homestead on the Northern Plains. And from here, I run a digital marketing strategy business where I help small businesses get visible, streamline their tech, and take the steps that they need to move their business forward strategically instead of doing a lot of frenetic activity, throwing spaghetti at the wall, and wondering why nothing is working.
I love that. And what got you in doing this?
Well, I always wanted to work from home from the time I was a kid. And I can say in the late 70s and early 80s, when I came up with this idea, people thought I was nuts because Zoom and the internet didn't exist and you just didn't work from home, right? Either you had a job or a business or you stayed home. But I had this dream of working from home and writing and doing research. And I kept holding on to it, and nobody had any answers for me. But I thought maybe I'm crazy, but this is what I'm going to hold on to. So I went to college, went to grad school, became a college professor, and still really had this going on in the back of my mind, but didn't know how to execute it and figured maybe this is a childhood folly and I need to let it go. I had my second child, and so I was more at like a part-time status. And I had one of my classes cut for the semester, which I was depending on that income. And if you know any professors, it's generally the day of the semester that you find out, oh, sorry, we promised to pay you for this, but we're not going to. So I needed to find some extra income to close that gap quickly. And I checked out an ad on Craigslist of all places. I looked under gigs because I didn't want full time. I already had a job. And I found something for a ghostwriter. And that opened up this whole idea of freelancing and basically building your own job and building a business from home. And from there, I got interested in doing more of the marketing and the content and learning how online business works. And through the midst of it, I saw how many people were being led astray because social media marketing was just coming on the scene. This was the early 2000s, and everybody's like, oh, just be on Facebook or just do this or post 10 times a day, and people were running themselves ragged and still wasn't doing anything for their business. And they thought, well, maybe I just need to do more posts, or maybe I'm just not on the right platform. But really it was because they didn't have a strategy, and they were just being sold like the trends and the hacks and this is what the influencers are doing. Meanwhile, the influencers behind the scenes have this whole team building a strategy, and everything had a purpose. And so once I figured that out, I wanted to be able to bring that to small businesses so that they didn't waste the time and the money and the energy trying to figure this out. And so many of them give up or they dig themselves into a hole and it's hard to get out. So that became my mission. And that's how I started doing what I'm doing, and I've refined it a little bit along the way. But right now, that's the big service that I provide. I have a platform that I built in collaboration with Go High Level, and I give people the tools, teach them how to use it, help them build a strategy so that they can move forward.
I love that. I think that's really important. The fact I think there's quite a lot of business owners that come up with a great idea, they want to serve
Mm-hmm.
people, and they just kind of go out and do and don't really
Yes.
think about the how they're going to scale that and how they're going to make
Mm-hmm.
that work long term. And bringing it back to the strategy, I think, is always the best way, and
Yes.
looking kind of holistically at the bigger picture. And if this business is going to grow in the way that you want it to, how can you do that in the best way that means that you're not working kind of 24/7?
Yes. Yes. And I always say nobody wants to be a one-hit wonder. You know, we all want this like amazing overnight success. But most people that happens to, either they've been working a really long time and you just heard about them, or it's this freak thing that they break out and it lasts for a few months and they disappear. And nobody really wants that. You might remember, you know, a song that came from this one group that had this one hit, but then they never did anything else. And really, we don't want that kind of fame. It would be better to have steady progress and maybe not be the top for quite a while, but your business is growing and you have this sustainable model that you can keep going.
Yeah, I love that. The idea of like business growing, but in a way that you can keep up with it instead of, like you
Yes.
say, going from 0 to 100 immediately
Yes.
and then having no way of sustaining that.
Yes.
So when we're looking at, or when you're working with your clients and you're looking at kind of the systems, what sort of things do you see commonly that people aren't using that they should, or they're kind of using it incorrectly? Are there common themes?
I would say email lists and social media are the biggest things. And really it all works together. But I think at this point we all know we should have an email list or we should have some sort of opt-in. That's not a foreign concept any longer. At one point it was like opt-in lead magnet, but now everybody knows, but they don't know how to capitalize on it. So your opt-in really should be something that, first of all, primes people to want to buy your offer, but also bridges that gap that overcomes their objections and makes them trust you. So there's so many things that we could put out there. I mean, I have piles of things. Sometimes I just create stuff and then I'm like, Jennifer, what are you doing with this? But I just, have that creative energy and I need to put it into something. But just because you create it doesn't mean it's necessarily the right thing to put out there. And so we're putting them out there and getting them on lists and then not knowing what to do with them. So we don't nurture them in a way that's going to make them buy something. We don't have calls to action in our email. And so it's a lot of work to create these lead magnets, get people in there, get them on your list and keep emailing them. And it really is an opportunity to monetize, but we're doing the work without monetizing it. So it isn't even that you need to do more. It's just you need to strategically do what you're doing. And the same thing is with social media. Social media is never a hard sell. It's always a soft sell. But I see people either just post, this is my product, buy it. This is my product, buy it. This, and then they say, nobody's buying it. Or they're on the other spectrum where I'm just going to talk about everything and post funny memes. And, people like my post, but nobody's buying it because they have no idea what you're selling. So you need to be the human, right? You need to sometimes post the funny meme and talk about your life, but people need to know about your product. But really the point of social media is education. It's educating your audience in what their problem is in the first place. I always say, how to solve a problem. But I would say 99% of the people that need you aren't Googling whatever your official title is because they don't even know that you're the answer for their problem, mostly because they don't know what the problem is. They just know something's not working. So you need to educate them on this is what your problem is, and here's some ways you can overcome it. But more importantly, it can be overcome. You aren't alone. And this is a process that will work for you. Because everybody thinks, well, I'm unique. This problem nobody can understand. So that's the real process of social media. And we get so off in the weeds. The reels and the stories and everything works in there. But we get so far into worrying about what the algorithm thinks and how this is working or what everybody else is doing. And then we're not really serving our audience in a way that's going to make them want to buy into what we're doing and stay fans. And I found that the people that have very successful businesses that are fueled by social media tend to have the smallest amount of followers. It's interesting. Not that they're, they have like 8 followers, but they might have 500 followers as opposed to 10,000. And you think, oh, there's no way their business is that great. But really, they're the ones having 5-figure and 6-figure months. And the other people are just chasing the trends and collecting all these followers and not necessarily monetizing them.
I love that because it's a vanity metric, isn't it? It's how many followers you've got, and it's something that we have been kind of programmed to care about. But if you've got 10,000 followers and none of them are buying, you might as well have 0 followers. Whereas if you've got a smaller audience, let's say you've got 500 or 1,000 followers, and like 10 to 15% of those are buying, that's a huge amount of people. I imagine walking into a room and being able to project your offer to 1,000 people. Like it's having a more engaged, smaller following, I think would be much better than having a less engaged, larger following.
Definitely.
There was something you said that I'd really love to kind of expand on, which was around the lead magnet or free download or whatever it is that you want to call it. And you said that it should be something that overcomes their objection. Can you just explain a little bit more about what you mean?
Well, there's two sides to that. The one is that everybody has objections. And I know sometimes we think that this is like the best product ever. How could you ever think that you don't need it? The reason is that we all know we have a problem and we want a solution. But when it comes down to it, we don't want to make the changes. We don't want to do the work to do it because that's uncomfortable. And that is all of us, whether you're highly driven or, you're someone that sits the fence. All of us have that in the back of our mind that when something new comes up, our first reaction is, I don't think it's going to work. I'm going to, just keep doing what I'm doing. So there are those objections that everybody has to taking that next step. And most of it is once you have built their trust and they see that, okay, you can take that next step and it will actually, it will actually work. They can trust the person that's providing it. And also it isn't going to completely derail their life and make them miserable. Cause that's another thing that we worry, sometimes when it's diet, I have a very restricted diet. And I always remember saying, I could never give up gluten. Like, how could you ever? But then once I got to a point where I realized that something drastic had to change in my life, or I had little children and I couldn't function and I was like, this isn't working. That's when I started changing my diet. And it wasn't, I'm not going to say it was easy, but being able to get up in the morning and do all the things that I do made it totally worth it. And it wasn't as horrible as in my mind it was. I felt like my life was over. I was never going to eat anything that tasted good again. And that's not true. And so that's the one end of the objection, is overcoming that, as my friend Sterling says, mind drama of it's just never going to work. I want to crawl in a corner and cry. And then on the other side, there's the objection of they're down here and you're up here and your product is somewhere in here, right? But there's still this little gap that they need to have knowledge or have a specific skill or understanding before they can take the leap to that product, because otherwise they're not going to be ready. So for instance, if you were teaching email marketing, but people don't know what a lead magnet is to get people into your email list. They're like, well, email marketing sounds great, but I don't even know how you get people on an email list. Well, then teaching them how to make a lead magnet and showing them that they could do it in 2 hours and people would actually be interested in it. Now, I have actually people interested in getting on my email list. I definitely want to sign up for your course.
Yeah, I love that. And the importance of an email list, I think, has grown rapidly over the last couple of years, especially with the fact that an email list, you own the data that's in it, whereas social media platforms you don't. And obviously Facebook went down again in, I think it was in March now, wasn't it? It went down for a few days, which meant that everybody lost access to all of their platforms. And I think that happened again last year. So it just kind of emphasizes the fact that building an email list is really important. So finding that lead magnet, something that your client is looking to solve, whatever problem it is, and creating that thing for them so that they get kind of a taste of what it would be like to work with you, I think is really important.
Yes. And email lists I'm so glad that you brought that up. That's the only thing that you own, because it's so true. You do not own anything that is on any of the social media platforms. And it doesn't matter if you're monetized, if you're an influencer, how many viral things you've had, you just don't own it, and it can disappear at any moment. And I have personally had things completely disappear. And you don't get them back. And unless you have a backup system or you have another way of getting in touch with people, you're starting back from zero. And so that's one thing that I've been trying to reach out to, are the people that say, well, I don't need a website. I run my whole business off of Facebook or Instagram. And I'm like, no, you are playing with fire. I know that you have this great following and people are buying, and it's free and it seems easy, but in a heartbeat, everything you have worked for is gone. and you're starting from scratch, and not even scratch because you don't even have crumbs, right, to go back and contact these people. Like the only way that you were in touch with anybody knew who you were or what you offered was that one Facebook page. And it's just a very scary place to be. And there's so many small businesses that don't realize how precarious it is, and how having the other avenues will generate the income more so even that will cover that cost, many times over. And so it's totally makes sense to invest in that and be able to scale your business and protect it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the businesses that have started out on Facebook or Instagram, I think that's a great way to get started. But yeah, once you start to kind of build some traction, getting off of those platforms and more reliant on something that you control, I think is absolutely key, whether that be an email list or your own website or whatever it is that you're doing. And that could be managed via a website that you own, or a CRM solution like Kajabi or Kartra or something, where you get to kind of collect and keep that data.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not against starting your business, like putting something out on Facebook and selling it. That is the best way to start. The people who say I need to spend a year building my website and doing this and doing that, and they invest all this time and money, and then they go to launch and they haven't built an audience, so nobody's buying it. They're in a much harder place because now they need to make up for all that time and money that they've invested. Putting something out there and testing the waters, I am a huge fan of that. Like I do not build anything, and this is completely honest, whether it's coaching or, a digital product that I'm selling or a course or anything like that, until I've tested the market and I have at least 3 people that say yes. So I'll put something out there, and if 3 people say yes, I'm like, okay, I put it out there, 3 people are interested, now I'll build it and deliver it. If I put it out there and it's just like crickets, and I rework the messaging, crickets again, then it's like, obviously this isn't what the market wants. And I'm sorry, my assistant has come to visit. I'm just not going to put in the time and effort to do it, because there are things that Cecilia, that we know how to do and could deliver amazingly, and we know how important it is. It's just that there's no market demand for it, so it makes it very difficult to sell. Or you haven't bridged enough of those gaps that people realize, like, oh, I need this thing up here, because they're still down here and they don't have the steps to get there.
And I think that comes back to people's perception that something needs to be perfect and finished before you put it out there, which absolutely doesn't. I think the way that you've just described it, I think is a much better way of launching products. Because if you put something out there that you haven't yet created, but you've got an idea and you kind of test the waters with your audience, you can see whether it's something that resonates with them. Because just because we like the idea or we think that it's a good idea doesn't necessarily mean that our ideal client is going to like the idea or understand it or know what you're talking about. So it might be that you need to change the language that you're using, or that it's just not a problem that they want fixing or think that they have.
Yes, I think the worth fixing is the big thing. I feel like even sometimes when they know that they have the problem, they just don't want to invest in fixing it either. And usually that's with digital products, where they're like, yes, I know that could be better, but when I have enough money, I'll just hire someone to do it. I can't be bothered learning how to do that. And so that's important, because all of us are busy. And so it's important to realize that really, when you feel stressed and like, I don't really want to take another course, that's exactly the way your audience is feeling. And so it has to be simple for them. There was a time when you launched a course, you're like, this has 17 modules and 25 workbooks and this and that, and we meet 10 hours a week, and everyone's like, ooh, look at all the value. And now it's like, oh gosh, like you see that and it's work, right? I do not want to put 20 hours, I don't want another job to take this course. People don't want all the stuff, they just want the solution. And so that's important when building things, is how are you delivering this in a way that people want? They may want the exact same solution or information, but it's just not packaged in a way that they're ever going to consume it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a difference. It comes back to kind of the different learning styles of individuals. I can't remember how many there are, but obviously you get like a visual learner and somebody that likes to read and somebody that likes doing. And if you can tailor what you're selling to each of those learning styles, even if you're selling the exact same thing, but for one of them it's something that they read, and for another it's a video that they watch, or whatever it is. But tailoring it to each of those learning styles means that you're capturing a wider audience of people that have the same problem but learn in completely different ways.
Yes, definitely. I actually have a master's in differentiated education, and that was exactly what I studied and what my thesis was on. My thesis was how to teach and reach every child in a public school classroom.
Oh, wow.
And so it was all about the different ability levels and the different learning styles. And I just love that, adapting things. And when I stopped teaching, I thought, well, that was a waste of money to go to grad school. But what I finally realized was, it's not, our learning styles don't end when we graduate, right? It's who we are. It's how we consume everything for the rest of our life. And they can change. We can adapt. Sometimes we grow and things shift, but still, there's still always going to be visual learners, auditory learners, the tactile processors, the people that need different kinds of stimulations or different types of input to really learn what you're doing. And I think that learning that as business owners is important, because we think of it as a little kid thing when they go to school. This is how they learn. And then we go into the world and it's like, okay, well, you're done with that. Now we're just going to teach everybody the same way again. And I've noticed that lately people have been using that language more, though, in business. like, I'm a tactile learner, I need to actually do it. Or I'm an auditory learner, can you make this into a podcast instead of a book or audio book? And I think that that's a great shift, because acknowledging that we are not all the same and we need different ways to consume and process things, but also we need to deliver it different. So even if you're an auditory processor, you are going to have people in your audience that are visual or tactile. And so you need to have those in there as well. So that's an important thing to remember as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it can be tough remembering that the way that me or you, the way that we consume information isn't necessarily the same way that other people do.
Yes.
And yeah, being able to adapt your own delivery style is key to capturing kind of a wider audience.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's where social media has its advantages, because you can post the videos, you can go live where people, the reels I feel are more, can be more auditory if you're putting the music in with the words, or, you go live and you interact with people. You can put up polls where they can actually vote. So it's a little bit more tactile. There's reading there. It's multi-sensory in as much as you can in a digital world. And so that's another thing that we need to capitalize on. I love to write, honestly. I don't so much love making videos, but I've learned to make videos because then I can reach that other segment, because not everybody likes to read or can read it and comprehend it. They need to be able to see it, or they need to be able to hear it. And I'm big on implementation, because then that's the hands-on part. I try to make whenever I do any kind of workshop or any kind of coaching, it's not me sitting there talking and you taking notes and I say, see you next week. It's always we're working together, because I want to show you how to do things and then I want you to do it. First of all, you internalize it, but also those people that are the tactile, they can sit and listen forever and nod and take lots of notes, and then they're never going to take the next step. So they're just as stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting them to actually take the action is the important bit.
Yes.
So if, let's say I'm in my business now, I'm solely dependent on social media and I want to kind of move into getting an email list, what would you suggest as kind of the first steps of things that I should be doing?
I would say the first step is evaluate what your plan is for that email list. It's easy to collect all kinds of apps and then not know how to connect them. So if your plan for that email list is, I'm going to bring them into an online course, or I'm going to bring them into something where I need a learning management system, then you need to find an email that integrates with that. This way you're not duct taping things together or paying $1 million to Zapier. This way you can create all these apps to connect your stuff. If you are looking solely to do live coaching and have people be able to book and pay for sessions, then you need something that's going to integrate with where you can have a client portal, you can have documents for them to sign, or follow-ups, or a way for them to connect with you and book their next appointment and pay for it. So I think that that is really key in looking at, there's so many email providers out there. And I will say, without naming names, that many times the ones that are the number one go-to and everybody's like, you need to start here, are the hardest ones and the least user-friendly. It's generally that they have a really big ads budget and they are really good at branding. So go out and don't just follow the herd and go to what everybody's telling you to use. Really go out. Most of them have free trials. Go and try them out. Talk to someone, like me or someone else who does systems and helps people with strategy of, this is what I want to do. What should I do? And I'm always happy to meet with people and say, okay, I really think you should go over here, or you should look for this. I've used so many of the systems as far as email service providers, learning management, websites, all of that I can direct them. And many times, I'll say, this is what I have, but this is what you need. And I'm fine with that, because I would rather someone start where they need to be and build it than get 2 years into it and realize this doesn't work at all. And now I need to try to rebuild someplace else. So that's the biggest thing, is know where you're heading with it. And also, make sure, do the trial, and don't be afraid to do multiple trials if you need to. If you're really not sure, if you've never done anything like that and you don't know what you're looking for, get in there and try out all the features, even if you just publish it and send it to your friend and say, how does this look? But know that you can do what you need to do, because you don't, like I said, you don't want to build it and then realize that it doesn't do what you need.
Absolutely. And I think doing the research up front is absolutely key, and finding a solution that you think works for you and what you're doing. Because like you said, there are definitely brands within the industry that we all hear about a lot, but they might not work the way that you want them to, or their user interface might not be one that suits you. Doing your research up first, I think, is absolutely key. And then, like you said, trying different solutions and seeing which one works. Because when you're at the start, it's easy to change solution. When you get a year down the road and you've built up an email list, but you realize it no longer works for the things that you want to do, changing that is that's a huge undertaking.
Yes.
So doing the work up front before you decide on a solution is definitely the right way to go.
And that isn't that you can never move, you can, and there are people that can help migrate. And sometimes you get so far down and you realize, this isn't really the road that I need to go on. I'm going to streamline and condense and start over. And that's fine too. That's the normal ebb and flow of business. And I think it's a natural trend that when you start, you have lots of things, and then you generally narrow down to this is what I'm working on. And so all these other things I created may be great, but I need to let them go and focus on this and put it somewhere that's going to work for me. And I recently did that. I pared everything down, and it is a painful process. It's also so much work to move it, but it's so much better in the end. So if you get to that point, don't be afraid to start over. I'm not going to lie to you. It stinks. You're not going to like it at all. But in the end, you're going to build something that's even better, and it is totally worth it.
Yeah, definitely. I think going through the pain of changing the solution is better than putting up with a solution that's not working in the way that you want it to.
Definitely.
So we've talked a lot about email lists, which I think are really important. And anyone that's listening that doesn't have one, really think about why you don't have one and what you might want to do to start building one, because I think it is key to success in most businesses. But just kind of going back to the social media side of things, we mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of talk all over social media about the right things to do and the right things to post and the right things to do for the algorithm and whatever it is. Do you have thoughts or opinions on what the right things to do are, or whether you should kind of just do what feels right for you, or what's your take on it?
I think that it's very important to be cognizant of how the platform works, because every platform does work different. It is looking for something different. And so while you shouldn't be a slave to the algorithm, you still should understand, if I'm going to participate in this platform, I need to do what is going to help me be more successful. everyone gets very upset with the algorithm, and there's algorithm changes. And sometimes, like, yes, they like kick you in the shins. Okay. It's not always a great thing. However, the algorithm is there, and it's just part of the game, right? And you just need to acknowledge it, but not work for the algorithm. You're not working for the algorithm, you're working for your audience. Also, the algorithm can help you though. So when you are consistent in what you're doing, when you do those things that the platform likes, for instance, Instagram, they've backed off on this, but for a while they just loved hashtags, right? The more hashtags, the more creative, they just loved hashtags. So if you were going to go on Instagram and say, well, I'm going to build my business on Instagram, but I don't believe in hashtags. Well, you can keep posting and you might find some people, but you're completely ignoring this tool that the algorithm gave you to find more people. So there are things like that that understand what your platform's looking for, but don't get lost in these trends, because many of the trends, we've had to move from static posts, then it was long form posts. Now we're moving more towards video. That is a trend that is a natural progression. It's part of what's changed in society. It's part of technology advancing and people consuming content differently. However, the trending noise or the challenges or all that other stuff, that can help you connect with the audience. But in the end, it's not what's going to truly build your business. Those are built for the platform to get more people involved. So that is built for Facebook and Instagram and TikTok to get more people on there and posting more content. And so while when you do some of that, it can help you, viral content isn't really a business builder. You could have something viewed by 100,000 people. None of them are your correct audience. They're never going to buy from you. So you need to balance the two. But you also need to, in that midst of balancing it, not just look at what you want to do, but what does my audience need? Is my audience is someone who likes to read these long, very highly researched posts? Then putting those up regularly and mixing it in with a couple of videos to grab their attention would be a better plan than saying, well, everyone's doing 30-second reels, so I'm just going to switch to 30-second reels and then wonder why your audience isn't following you. Just like the learning styles, there's audiences that tend to have different ways of doing things, and you'll have learning styles within there, but they gravitate to you because they're looking for a certain type of delivery. And when you stray from that because you want to follow what all the cool kids are doing, then you leave your audience behind.
Yeah, for sure. I love the concept of going viral. It doesn't help your business.
No.
So it might be great getting your video in front of 1 million people or 10,000 people, however many it is. But like you said, the majority of those people aren't going to be your ideal client, and you're going to end up with loads of new followers that aren't going to engage with your content because they might have liked that one video that you did. But if the rest of your content doesn't exactly match the format or the style of that video that went viral, then they're soon going to lose interest in your business page, and they'll either just never engage or they'll end up unfollowing you. And it completely kind of skews with your numbers. And it just, it's, although it sounds like something that we would want to happen, it doesn't actually benefit your business in any way.
No. And it's actually, I've found that the people, when you have people engage, and believe me, engagement is totally important. If you are posting and posting and posting and posting and no one is engaging at all, you need to really reevaluate what you're posting, how you're posting, and what your messaging is. Or even like how you're growing your audience, because then there's a problem if you are continually putting stuff out there. On the other hand, though, just having engagement doesn't mean that those are the people who are going to buy into what you're doing. I've found that there are so many more people that are looking in the background that never comment, that don't like, but they're watching what you're doing. And at some point, they do take that leap. And some of the best clients that I've had have been people that out of the blue message me or send me an email or run into me in networking or whatever and say, hey, I've been following you for 2 years now, and I've realized that I really need to work with you. And I think I've never heard of you. I have no idea who you are. You've been following you for 2 years, and they can tell me all these different posts that they've seen. but they've never commented. They never liked anything. They haven't tried to engage in any way, shape, or form. So the engagement is important. This way other people will see it. And it's kind of proof of concept, like we were talking about with launching. But it isn't necessarily the people who are engaging all the time that are going to become your clients. They are helping the people who will buy in, that aren't need to come over that bridge to being willing to say yes to something and commit to it. They're helping it be delivered to them and helping it serve more people.
Absolutely, which I think is why it's so important for business owners to continue posting and doing things, even if no one's engaging. It can feel really demotivating. I completely get that when you're putting out all this content and it feels like no one's responding to it. But like you said, there are people that are watching it and that will continue to watch it, and eventually they'll just decide to work with you. And that could have been somebody that's watching you for 6 months or 2 years, but if you stop putting the content out, they'll never get the opportunity to be one of those clients that comes and works with you. So yeah, just try, to everyone listening, try and do this consistently anyway, and get over the idea that no one's watching it, because there absolutely will be people that are watching.
Yes. And now Facebook has given us more tools at looking at insight, especially if you've made your platform, I'm trying to remember what they call it now. It's like a professional platform profile. I mean, instead of just a regular profile, you can get more insight. And so I will go in and look, and it says, like 19,000 engagements. And then I look at my posts and it's like 5 likes, 3 likes, 2 comments. And I'm like, nice. But the thing is that there are people coming in who are seeing it, and I can see my follower count going up. They're just not engaging. So if you can get that on your profile, and I wish I could remember what it is, it's just like a toggle switch that it goes from a regular one to, I think it's a professional one. It gives you more insight. And so you won't feel so disheartened that I'm doing this video and I'm going live every day and I have 2 thumbs up, and one's from my aunt and the other one's from, like my best friend. There are people still seeing it. So that's always good. Metrics on social media mean, like, take them with a grain of salt and then a little bit more, because they don't really mean what you think they mean. However, it is good to see how people react to your content, and that people are seeing it, even if it doesn't look on the outside like a lot of people are seeing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, just keep doing things consistently. I always come back to consistency in everything.
Yes.
Consistency, and also consistency doesn't mean posting 3 times a day every day. It just means
No.
doing it consistently so that your audience know when to expect something from you. So whether that's every other day, or you go live once a week, or just something so that your audience know when they're going to see something from you.
Yeah, I always say consistency trumps volume every single time. So if you can only consistently post at 10 a.m. on Tuesday and Thursday, the algorithm will be more friendly to you than if you're posting all over the place and then you have frenetic week where you post like 50 things and the next week it's 2. That's when the algorithm works against people and people get frustrated with it. Once you train the algorithm to know when things are coming out, and it shows that your audience is showing up at that time at some point. Now it can take 3 to 6 weeks, so it's not overnight. Then that works in your favor. And so, like you said, if you can do it consistently and your audience knows that it's coming and will show up, then the algorithm will push that to even more people because they know when you're going to show up.
Yeah, I love that. The idea of training the algorithm. Obviously, we talked earlier about understanding what's important to to whichever platform that you're on.
Yes.
But yeah, I love the idea of training the algorithm so that it knows what your business is doing and who it should be showing it to. So I was watching some things about TikTok recently, and the fact that for your videos to go further on TikTok, it suggested that you go and engage with the kind of videos that you're posting, so that it can learn that you are a business strategist, for example. If you go and engage in a lot of helpful business content, TikTok knows that that's what your profile is about. So when you post videos, it will show them to more people that are interested in that same subject, which I think is a really interesting concept. And the ability to train the algorithm, I think, is really, really cool.
Yes, engagement is so important, and it's not thought of very often or talked about, but it's social media, and so the media wants you to be social. It wants you to go out, but there is that. It's important to engage with your friends and your family still. I'm not saying you can never do that, but you should have some sort of strategic, I'm going to engage with ideal clients, people who serve my ideal clients and influencers in my sphere. And it's not that you need to do 500 of them a day, but just do a little bit of that so that you're getting visible on their platforms, their profiles, but also, like you said, it's training the algorithm that this is what's interesting to me. I'm going to join groups that are part of my topic, and I'm going to engage with them and become a top contributor and help people out. I'm going to comment on things that align with what I'm doing. So when I go into a group, it's very tempting sometimes when it's like, oh, I could answer that question. But does it have anything to do with what I'm doing or what I'm trying to reach people for? No. So it's a waste of time. It's confusing the algorithm. And, it's diluting my strategy. I want to be very involved in groups, but I want to be involved in the right way. And I think that's important to also think of that in your engagement. Like, your engagement is a strategy. It's not just, let me sit on TikTok for 3 hours and watch, video after video. In some ways that's engaging. And at least TikTok knows you're not just scheduling it and not showing up. But at the same time, it really does want to see that you are intentionally building that audience.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And one of the things that always goes through my mind is that don't post and ghost. So if you are posting something on whatever platform, engage with your followers first, engage with your ideal clients, then do your post, and then do some more engagement. So that, because the algorithm, none of the social media apps want you to just post and then leave the platform.
No.
The whole idea of it is to get you to use the platform more. So if you're doing that before and after posting something, the likelihood is that your post is going to end up going further and being shown to more people because you've engaged in the platform more.
Yes. And it is important to do it when you're around posting. That is like the ideal. Post a little bit. Engage a little bit, post, and then engage a little bit more. If for whatever reason you can't, though, you can train the algorithm that I engage at 10 p.m. at night, but I post at 9 a.m. in the morning. Like, that can work, because if you're doing that consistently, it's like, okay, well, this is when she shows up and, interacts with people, and she's interacting with the same people. It may not have exactly the same effect, but it does still have that push of you're engaging, you're training the algorithm of these are the type of people I want to talk to. And I am actually trying here. I'm not just, spewing content out and hoping that you deliver it to the right people. I know that there's a big push to be, like they call it, omnipresent, and you're on every single platform, which at this point, I don't even know how many platforms there are. There's just so many of them. And you are putting out 5 to 10 pieces of content on every single one of them every day. And the people that are talking about this all have massive teams, like Neil Patel, Jeff Walker, some of those like really top tier coaches that have incredibly large teams that are helping them do this. But I have noticed over the past year or two, well, I guess maybe like just the past year, now that they've been trying to do that and AI is making it easier so they have even more content, their engagement from followers has significantly dropped, because they're pushing out all this content, but they're not doing that engagement on the other end, because it's impossible. Even with a big team, if you are in 10 different platforms and you're putting out 5 to 10 pieces of content a day on every single one of them, you're never going to be able to engage enough to feed that algorithm, right? There may be one platform that you are. The rest of it is mostly for branding. However, I argue that that's going to blow up in their face, because yes, with AI, you can create all this stuff and you can put out more and more and more and more. When it comes down to it, your audience doesn't just want more, they want you. Like, they want to know that you are actually there. And I think that is becoming apparent that these people aren't. There's no way that they're posting this much and they're not engaging. So it's obvious they aren't on the platform. Either a VA is scheduling it I have a VA that schedules things for me, so there's nothing against that. But they have, someone scheduling it, or someone, they're just scheduling it themselves or whatever. It's just being pushed out to multiple channels at once. And they're just not there for their audience. And it's not working, because especially right now, people are more cynical and skeptical than they've ever been. It takes 21 to 30 touch points to convert somebody. It used to be 5 to 7. There used to be at least 20% of the population that were impulse buyers. Now it's in the single digits. It is harder than ever to get somebody to say yes. That doesn't mean that they're not. It just means that you need to work harder. And the biggest thing that I keep saying, the currency of 2024 is going to be trust, because that's what's going to be separate these businesses. Now that it's harder to get people to say yes, what you need to work most on is trust and building that community. And you can't do that when you're just pushing out tons of content. So AI can be a tool. It can be used in great ways. It can be a time saver, but don't treat it as this Band-Aid that's going to build your business just because you can put more stuff out there. Like I said, consistency always trumps volume. And you said the same thing. It is so much better to show up consistently, engage, and really build that trust with your audiences and deliver to them and let them, they need to know and like you, but more than ever, they need to trust you. And they can't do that if they're just getting AI generated content all day long.
Yeah, you definitely need that personal touch and actually engaging with your followers. And consistency is one of my favorite things in everything that I do. I think being consistent is the key. I always say it's the small consistent changes that you make over the long term that are going to make the difference. Totally. It's not the big changes that you make all of a sudden that are going to make the difference. So if you're not showing up consistently on social media and then next week you post 20 times, but then the following week you don't post at all, that's going to make absolutely no difference to your business. But if you were able to post once a week for the next 4 weeks and then increase that to twice a week, and then you're doing some engagement at the same time, that's what's really going to make the difference in your business and building that habit up over time. So if you can take half an hour every morning to engage with your audience and you go and like some of their posts and you respond to their questions, that's going to do far more for you than putting out 5 posts a day and letting a scheduler do it for you.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. I mean, this is like the sermon I'm always preaching to my audience is, yes. And they say, well, how many times should I do it? I'm like, how many times can you do it? Like realistically, how many times in a week not how many times do you want to do it? How many times do you think you should do it? But how many times can you actually show up and do this exact plan? And if it's only once a week and that's what you can, then do it once a week. Because that would be better than doing it no times a week. So, do it once a week and stick with it. Because we do get into that frenetic thing and we feel like, oh, so-and-so's doing this, let me try it, but it's not sustainable. It really is those tiny decisions. And so we own a homestead, which is kind of like, this is a little bit of a side, but I relate homesteading and gardening to business so much because they line up so well. When we first bought it, it was like, oh, we've been dreaming about this for years. We're going to get all the animals and build, the 10,000 square foot garden and do all the stuff. And very quickly, it all fell apart because we didn't have the systems. We didn't have the knowledge. We got completely overwhelmed. And it was hard to keep up with because we had gone from, oh, I have this small garden to I have, 5 acres with 100 animals and all this other stuff. We had developed like 5 acres overnight out of the 11 that we own. And it was so hard that first year. And there were so many tears and there was so much frustration. There was a lot of loss all over the place because we just couldn't keep up with things. It was terrible for everybody. And looking back, I realized, we should have just gotten the chickens and gotten that system going and then gone to something else. Now it's working very well, but now we've realized that before we add anything, I'm very stringent about like how we have to add things. And my one son loves to farm. And so he'll, come into my office and he's like, I have an idea. And I'm like, give me a business plan. Like, how much is this going to cost? What materials do you need? What's the outcome and why should I invest in this? And he will write up a whole thing. And I say, if you can prove to me that A, you're going to do it, and B, like it's beneficial, then sure, I will give the investment to it and we will build this because the whole family will benefit, even if it's your project. Well, we were just putting things out there. And now we had to pull the brakes back a couple of years ago and say, okay, just because we have a great business plan and it would be beneficial doesn't mean we should jump. We need to build the infrastructure first and know that this is something, okay, is this going to add 5 minutes to our daily chores twice a day, or is this going to add an hour and a half? And we really only have 10 minutes we can devote to it. And I think that the same thing with business is that before you say, well, I want to scale my business, so I'm going to be on 5 different platforms, and I'm going to start a podcast, and I'm going to start a YouTube channel, and I'm going to blog every single day, and I'm going to do all these things that I see people doing. Do you have the bandwidth and the systems to do that? Because if you don't, you're just going to run yourself into the ground, and it's going to do nothing for your business. It's just going to be a source of frustration and loss in some capacity. Your time, your money, your energy, your opportunity, because really when you're doing more, you're taking away from opportunities. So I really believe that less is more when you're being strategic. And then when you get to the point that you realize, okay, this is going so well, and really, I really want a podcast. So now I'm going to sit down and figure out, how do I work that podcast in, and what does it look like, and what investment is it going to take? Not just money, but time and energy to get this going. And if I do that, is that really going to grow my business and bring in more clients? Or is it going to subtract from my business because now I have less time to engage in groups? I have less time to serve my clients. So it's not going to be as smooth, and they're not going to be as happy. Like where there's always, everybody has 24 hours in a day, right? So you can't infinitely create more things to do. You need to decide where things are going and how they're going to get done.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say you can do anything you want in your business, but you can't do everything at the same time. You need to plan out what you're going to do and make sure that you can manage the current workload before you then add other things into it. So is what your whatever your strategy is at the moment, whether that's doing a podcast, like you said, you need to make sure that what you're doing right now is working for you, and you're managing to do it well in the time that you've got, before you then start adding in more things. Because like you said, if you end up adding in too many things, you're going to stretch yourself too thin, and then you'll end up doing none of them well, which will be detrimental to both your business, but also you personally as well, because you're going to feel stressed and overworked, and it's just not going to be very fun.
No, not at all.
Well,
I think we've all made that mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been lovely chatting to you.
Yes, you as well. I loved being here, and it was great having a chat, because I think that we see the same, in so many ways. And so it's great to get to chat with you and collaborate and serve your audience in this way.
Thank you. Well, have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.